Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zack, and today I am driving a 2000 Mercedes S430. Up front is a 4.3 liter V8, and down below is a 5-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this S430 for two reasons. First of all, the S-Class has always been the pinnacle of the Mercedes lineup, and so this is the best that Mercedes could do back in the year 2000. But the second reason is the fact that this is not a very reliable automobile. And so today you might notice that the shots of the exterior are just filmed in a random neighborhood. That's because I didn't want to take it too far from the owner's house, because this has been an incredibly unreliable automobile, and I'm excited to share with you why that is, as well as experience its unreliability firsthand. But if you'd like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you'd like to see all my videos weeks or sometimes months in advance, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month. But let's get back to that 4.3 liter V8 under the hood. Well, this is the last time you'll hear me say it in this video. This is actually very reliable. The 4.3 liter V8 is a tremendously under-stressed engine. From its design standpoint, it's very stout, reliable, and makes good power. That's nothing really interesting. And the 5-speed automatic connected to it is good as well. It's not the quickest shifting transmission I've ever felt, especially in a Mercedes product, but it does the job pretty reliably, and that's it. Last but not least, the S430 is rear-wheel drive. However, they did have a 4MATIC version that was all-wheel. This is just the standard rear. How does it feel to drive the S430? Not bad. This does have the Airmatic Active Intelligent Ride Control air suspension, which is problematic for sure, but it will actually adjust the ride height with your speed. It has active dampening, and all this together does make a nice ride. However, it fails constantly. Now, there was a bigger system as well called the ABC system that was hydro-pneumatic, and that failed a lot more, and that was on the nicer trim level vehicles. I drove an SC last year that had that system, and of course that system also failed during my review. But it rides nice. The 4.3 liter is solid enough. So from that standpoint, it's a pretty good car. It's just, well, everything else around it. So let's talk about that with the interior. Well, moving into the interior, in front of me, I have a gauge cluster. I think, at least, because it doesn't light up anymore. Doesn't work. It is not the fuse. Something has malfunctioned to make the gauge cluster no longer light up. The gauges still move, and at night the needles will light up. But driving here today, I have no fucking idea what any of this is saying. It says the brake light's on, even though the parking brake is not on, and the SRS airbag is illuminated. Not sure if that's real, fake, or indifferent. Now, to be fair, that gauge cluster was recalled in 2006 for this exact problem of failing to illuminate, but that doesn't really help me here today. On the steering wheel on the left, we do have some selectors, and off to the right, we have volume and phone options, and to the left of the wheel, we have a climate control vent, our headlight switch, fog light switch, and our power parking brake. And moving on to the door, we have power mirrors, power seat adjustments, memory seats, heated seats, as well as power windows, and our trunk release down below. Moving into the center, we have our climate control vent. This upper vent is actually for natural, cool outside air, and the bottom vents are the climate controlled air. We have buttons for our ESP off, our raising of the vehicle in suspension mode. We can lower the headrest, hazard switch, locking, and our tow mode. So the alarm will be set off if the vehicle senses that all four wheels are picked up off the ground. So you hit this button so you can tow it. And then we have a tiny little infotainment display. This has not aged super gracefully, but for 2000, this was pretty futuristic. We have our number pad, navigation. We have our selector and volume and mute. Climate control is found down below. Dual zone climate here in the year 2000, as well as dual auto climate for the year 2000. Very, very impressive to see that. Ashtray and cigarette lighter, little cubby in the center, and the shifter. The shifter off to the left, we do have wet and sport modes, or winter and sport, weather and sport, whatever you want to call it, and a pretty standard jigsaw style shifter. We do have an openable cubby as well, center console, and we have pop-out cup holders, so we will do a big freaking bottle test, and it fails, but we all knew it would. And then then the seats. The seats are heated. The driver and passenger seats have 2 levels of memory. Very, very nice. So your wife and your girlfriend can have 2 different memory seat options. And they are comfortable. You know, that is the S-Class that I remember. Very comfortable, very plush, and the seats do feel that way. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats. So let's go do a back seat review. Well, that's a good start. All right, so I'm hitting unlock, and it is still not unlocking. I hear it clicking, but it won't unlock. The other side is better. Nope. Can I guess I can manually. There we go. There we go. Okay. Stepping in the back here. As you can see, it's not the cleanest S-Class I've ever been in. Close it up. Knee room, great. We do get a vanity mirror. Of course, one of the few things that still works is the lights. We get reading lights as well. We have climate control vents down there. Obviously, not a very well-kept interior. We have some storage as well as cup holders. Wow, is that like a part number? Huh, okay, leave that in there. My allergies are going crazy back here. It's fine. Well, it's actually really good. The knee room is great. Headroom is great. 5'11", not a small guy, not hitting the ceiling. Legs have tons and tons of space. The window sticker did say this was the long wheelbase version. We have power windows, vents on the doors, things like that. Not super tech heavy back here, which is honestly probably a good thing. And we do have pop-out ashtrays. I've always loved that in the back of the S430s that I've driven in the past. So very, very nice. This was the place you wanted to be. You want to be driven around in here for 2 reasons. First of all, very comfy, tons of space. Is that the second reason that if you were being driven in an S-Class, you probably didn't own it, and then you didn't have to worry about it. So this is definitely the preferred place to be. Let's hop into the back. We'll take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to be able to see the trunk. Let's turn it on again because the key fob is not working. Nothing. So when I lock it and unlock it, the lights flash, so it's getting the message. Nope, nothing. There's a big chunky button right here that does have a keyhole on it. However, I can't seem to get the key out. This is supposed to slide out. Oh, there it is. All right, let's see now. I'm twisting and pushing. No. Oh, we got it. Oh, I am glad you cannot smell what I smell. I don't know if all this is supposed to be attached or not, but it's not. Once we are back here, we have the command navigation system. Very interesting. The 2000 S-Class. This is sort of like a booklet of sorts. Ooh, quick tips, command system. See, like, look at how much literature you needed and CDs you needed for this car. Oh my God. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an S-Class VHS tape. A video introduction. That is pretty wild. So, pretty cool. This is actually a pretty cool artifact. You can pause to read if you want. But look at this stuff. Quick tips, general information. Oh, here's the gauge cluster that doesn't work, in case you were curious of what it actually looked like. But very, very cool. This is some awesome, awesome literature around the back. The S-Class. That's pretty cool. Anyway, this is the trunk. Obviously not great. Battery charger, that is definitely not factory. Do I dare look under here? Oh, we do get a spare tire. Things like that. So pretty normal trunk stuff after that. We'll talk about why it's so messy here in a second. But very, very cool. I've never seen an S-Class VHS tape. So very cool discovery there. Now we got to talk about the looks. And I actually think that this generation of S-Class looks pretty good. However, I think seeing one just gives me a little bit of anxiety because I know how unreliable they truly are. So anytime I see one, I go, oh, that's a money pit right there. And unfortunately, I'm not wrong. That is a true guttural reaction, and rightfully so. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving this Mercedes S430? Well, there's two reasons I wanted to do this review. First of all, the owner, Ted, he's a good friend of mine. Anytime he picks up a car, I review it no matter the condition. But he said, hey, let me clean up this S430 for you. Let me figure it out. Let me fix some things. And I said no. I wanted it just as he found it. This car was pulled literally out of a barn. A wealthy farm owner bought this back in the 2000s and used it as their farm get-around vehicle, hence its condition. But I also wanted to talk about why this car is so faulty, why it's unreliable, why these cars are such headaches, because I've driven a few of this generation before, and in the videos, usually everything works pretty well. The owners have them in tip-top shape, but what you're not seeing is the true reality of the W220. The W220 is a big, big headache. And so this car, the adaptive suspension has failed. The gauge cluster has failed. The cooling fans failed. And actually, as I say that, we are getting pretty toasty here. So it appears that they might have failed again. So I'm going to pull over and let this thing cool off. Most, if not all of the systems have gone bad on this car at one point or another. And why is that? Why are these unreliable? Well, there's many, many reasons, so let's dig into a few. The easiest one to point a finger at is the fact that there are vents up at the bottom of the windshield on the outside, and they have a valve in them, and sometimes that valve will get jammed, stuck, or lodged, and then they don't drain properly. And when it doesn't drain properly, water will go into those vents, back up, and end up coming into the interior. Well, on the other side of those vents is important electronics. So the electronics, more often than not, get fried by water. But that's not an entire reason why this car is unreliable. Back in the 70s and 80s, the Mercedes products that I've driven have always been top-notch in quality. They're built like bank vaults. They're as sturdy as bedrock. And they were able to exist off of that because they were this sort of exotic thing. If someone bought a Mercedes, you know they had it going on. They had the cash. It was a status symbol, and they were able to build that status off of the quality of car that they built. You knew when you bought a Mercedes, you bought quality. You bought thorough engineering. Well, by the late 80s, that wasn't really enough to sell cars. Yes, they were still well made, but as more and more people started to join the Mercedes family, and they started to offer more affordable versions like the C-Class, the A-Class, it almost started to water down their brand a little bit. So how does Mercedes keep that edge over BMW, Audi, Bentley, whoever you want to compare them to? Well, you gotta have technology. And I think at the same time as well, in the early 90s, Lexus came out with the LS400, and really truly it blew everyone's socks off. It started eating the S-Class's lunch from day one. It was built better, it was more reliable, it was more affordable than an S-Class. And so Mercedes kind of panicked, and they figured they need to stay at the cutting edge. That is how they were going to maintain their owners. And also, if you think about it, S-Class owners usually bought the newest model. They would own it for 2 or 3 years, go buy the new one. You know, someone driving around in a 98 S-Class in the year 2000, the folks at the country club would be, what are you doing? You're driving a 2-year-old S-Class? What are you on, welfare? I imagine that's how rich people talk. I don't know. But now with the pressures of Lexus, pressures of BMW, staying on that cutting edge, they started pushing technology faster and faster and faster. Where cars would maybe have a few modules in the 1980s, by the mid-2000s, some Mercedes products had over 70 modules on board to run the various systems that it required. The air suspension, the adaptive dampers, the screen and the infotainment, all the little computers underneath the hood. All of this together made a very futuristic product, which was able to help them sell. But unfortunately, the more cooks you add in the kitchen, the more likely someone's going to get burned. And over years and years and years of use, those systems start to break. They start to wear out, and they're very, very expensive to fix. It's not like a power steering pump on a Kia Forte. We're talking about very low production number vehicles and very, very high technology. And so in their pursuit of being competitive, their pursuit of being the most cutting edge, the reliability went out the door. Because Mercedes at the time wasn't worried about the third, fourth, or fifth owner. They were worried about getting them out the door in the year 2000. And now it has come around to bite them in the butt. There was a big pissing contest between the luxury brands, but unfortunately this pissing contest was done on their backs. And when that happens, no matter the winner or the loser, everyone gets wet. And that's what happened here. There were no winners, but there are just many, many losers. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Ted for letting me borrow his S430 and not cleaning it up for me. I specifically requested as dirty as it came. He's been absolutely wonderful. I've reviewed dozens and dozens of his automobiles. I think he has the most cars that I've reviewed here on the channel from a single person. He's absolutely wonderful, such a good friend and friend of the channel, and I appreciate him very, very much. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.